Today we are going to take a look at a topic that gets a lot of attention in the field of social psychology, and that's group dynamics. How do we act in the presence of others? How do our behaviors within a group differ from our behaviors as individuals? Well, one thing researchers have found is that people have a tendency to go along with the actions and views of their fellow group members. This is known as conformity. You've probably heard of a famous study conducted by Solomon Asch, where he presented subjects with a card depicting 3 lines of varying length and asked them to identify which line on the card matched a separate reference line in length. Now, what Asch did is he hired some paid Confederates to sit in the room and purposely select the wrong answer to see how this affected the participants' responses. And what he found was that in all the trials, approximately 70% of the subjects conformed, meaning that they repeated the same incorrect answer as the Confederates at least once, even though the correct answer was really obvious. Now, another instance of conformity that you may want to be familiar with is a study conducted by Theodore Newcomb. And what Newcomb did was he studied the population of an all-women's school called Bennington College. And most of the women who went to this college came from fairly wealthy, conservative families, but the school itself had a pretty liberal environment. And what Newcomb found was that as the women progressed through their undergraduate years, they became more and more liberal because they conformed with the more liberal environment of the school. So we know that there's a strong tendency for individuals to conform to the behaviors of other group members, but what happens when a group of people are brought together for a specific purpose, maybe to complete a task or make a decision about something? Well, what researchers have found is that being in a group may actually slow the rate at which individual members perform. Because sometimes when individuals know that they can depend on other group members, they put in less effort themselves, which is a concept known as social loafing. Now, kind of along the same lines of how groups affect individual performance is the concept of social facilitation, which was a theory originally proposed by a social psychologist named Robert Zonk. And Robert Zonk, in case you don't know, was, like I said, a social psychologist who spent a lot of time studying the relationship between intelligence and birth order, and also took a look at cognitive processes associated with group behavior. His theory of social facilitation proposed that when a person performs a simple task with other people around, the presence of those people can actually help enhance the performance of the task or speed it along. But depending on the difficulty of the task, those people can have the opposite effect. So if a person has to perform a particularly complex task, then having other people around may slow him down or affect his performance negatively. Now, while social loafing and facilitation referred to the behavior of an individual within a group, there's also a lot of research devoted to understanding how a group behaves as a whole. Groupthink is a phenomenon that was first proposed by Irving Janis, and it occurs when a group is trying to come to a consensus or make a decision. A lot of times what happens is that for the sake of avoiding conflict, the group may make a really quick or hasty decision without stopping to consider its potential weaknesses. And even though there may be members within the group who disagree with the decision, they keep their views to themselves to avoid facing criticism and to preserve harmony within the group. Along the same lines of groupthink is a concept known as group polarization. This principle illustrates how a group of people are likely to reach a more extreme decision about a particular course of action than any of its members would on their own. And group polarization is sometimes referred to as risky shift because the decision made by the group may contain a higher than average level of risk. So discussions about potential decisions are one thing, but sometimes the real danger occurs when people come together to take action, maybe in support of some cause. In these cases, something called deindividuation may occur. Now, deindividuation basically means that when people are caught up in the excitement of a group, they may temporarily let go of themselves and merge with the larger group. As with group polarization, members of the group may partake in risky or violent behaviors simply because they're going along with the group. So if you've ever been to a football game or have participated in an angry protest, you've probably experienced some level of de-individuation for yourself. So I know this may seem like a lot of information, but most of these concepts are more or less self-explanatory. So far we've talked about conformity, which is the tendency for people to go along with the views of fellow group members, and we've looked at the studies of Solomon Asch and Theodore Newcomb. If you remember, Asch's study involved asking subjects to identify matching lines, while hired Confederates purposely provided the wrong answer. And Newcomb noticed how formerly conservative women adopted the liberal views of their classmates once they entered college. As far as the behavior of individuals within a group goes, we talked about social loafing and social facilitation. Now, social facilitation refers to the way that individual performance on a simple task is enhanced by the presence of others, while social loafing illustrates how members in a group may put forth less effort than fellow group members. And finally, we have the concept of groupthink, which describes how a group may come to a quick decision without critically examining its pros and cons, and group polarization, which refers to the way a group may make a riskier than average decision, even though its individual members would probably be more cautious on their own. And of course, de-individuation, which refers to the way people let go of their identity and in this state are more likely to partake in violent or destructive behaviors.